Hello, my name is Joshua Murray, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on the Deepwater Horizon disaster. Okay, I'm going to talk about what happened with it. I'm going to talk about why it happened. Specifically, I want to focus in on this blow-up preventer. So the purpose of this presentation is to go over a report on why this BOP preventer failed. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Right, so hope you enjoy this presentation. Here we go. So the first image on the screen I chose because this is what first piqued my interest back in 2010. I remember seeing this image, and actually what it is, it's a still photo of what then was a live stream which went around the world showing this well leaking uncontrollably into the Gulf of Mexico. So I remember at the time thinking, wow, this is crazy that this is happening, and it's also crazy that I can see it happening in real time. So it stuck with me then, and it's been with me ever since, and I stumbled on the topic again earlier this year and found it again fascinating, so that's what drove me to do this report. So the overall report today, we're going to start with the purpose, work our way eventually to discuss what happened, then we're going to leave some time for questions at the end, which there shouldn't be any because unless you can jump through my computer, that's not happening. Alright, so the purpose of this report, we want to review what happened in the Deepwater Horizon. Specifically, there's a couple of reports that I went over. Then through that, I want to determine what happened to the Deepwater Horizon blow-up preventer, okay, and what caused those things to happen. I want to make some recommendations as far as what could be done to improve things. I did this for Miss Beach. Hello, Miss Beach. And I did it in Doha, Qatar. It's ridiculously hot here, and windy, and dusty windy. Anyways, so I did this to fulfill requirements for Assignment 3. I've included some other offshore rig disasters or rig disasters. I'm not going to go over these in great detail, but I just sort of gave them as context to show that this disaster was not the only disaster, and that's why people that put themselves sort of in this situation will get something called hazard pay or danger pay, because it is a dangerous job. So anyways, the biggest of these disasters happened in the UK about roughly 30 years ago. Alright, so the scope of this report, the person that requested it, authorized it, and is the audience is Miss Beach. Again, hello Miss Beach. Criteria, we want to go over what happened to the BOP. Factors there, the biggest factor is we want to explain why it failed. Boundaries and limitations were essentially the time that I had and the limited scholarly material that was available for the failure itself. There was lots of stuff talking about the results of the failure, but not the actual equipment failure. So methodology for this report consisted only of secondary research, primarily of this report from the CSB, the governmental body in the US that dealt with this, and Transocean, the company that ran the rig, their internal report. So a good bulk of what you see is based on that. So the incident itself happened on April 20th in the Macondo Prospect. That's about 50 miles off the shore of Louisiana and the Gulf of Mexico. Happened on the Deepwater Horizon rig, which you can see the rig in flames here. So what happened was they were doing temporary abandonment activities and they didn't go so well, and the accident was essentially a mix of human and mechanical failure, as most large-scale industrial accidents are. So it culminated with an uncontrollable release of hydrocarbons onto the deck of the rig, a big fire that burned for 36 hours. 17 people were injured and 11 people were killed, which is tragic. There was 4.9 million barrels of oil released into the Gulf, so we can see this picture here. This is what gained worldwide attention, was this big oil spill that really grabbed people's viewership. They were enamored by that, so that's why I included that picture. So eventually they capped the rig 87 days after it started leaking. So key definitions, I've included some you can review at your leisure. We'll sort of go over these in detail as we go. So the BOP, the blowout preventer, is this. I'm going to move me over here. This mechanical device down here, the seafloor. So here's the seafloor, here's the sea, here's the surface, here's the rig, here's the people. Hello, people. So it's located on the seafloor, connected to the drilling rig. The rig here via this long pipe is called a riser. Actually, this BOP is a series of BOPs stacked together on top of each other. So we'll see that later. It's known as a BOP stack. Okay, so the BOP stack for this rig, the Deepwater Horizon, was 2 annular and 5 ram type BOPs. So the annular type, it's like we can see here, is like a donut. And so how it works is, if they want to block the flow of fluid around the pipe, they inflate it, and it acts like an inflatable dinghy, I guess, or inner tube, and blocks that pipe. Okay, so we can see it here. Here's the BOP stack. Here's the stack of rams here at the bottom, which we'll talk about in a second, and here's the annular preventer BOPs, and here's what would connect to the floor, the ocean floor, the wellhead. So I'm going to move me back over here. So the BOP again is made up of annular type preventers and the ram type shear BOP elements. So we can see these ram type, they are used to cut the pipe in half, and they're usually at the bottom of the BOP underneath the annular preventer. So if there's a blowout, meaning that fluid is escaping the well uncontrollably, we can use any of those BOPs or all of them to help stop it. So what happened? The crew didn't know that their abandonment had failed. The plugging of the well via the cement barrier, which we can see an example of one here. Okay, so this was sort of used like a memorial. This is the cap on the Macondo well. It didn't work initially. So that cap didn't work. It wasn't capped off. They didn't catch it until essentially too late, close to too late. Had these 2 preventers worked, or the big BOP stack itself, had it worked, that would have fixed the problem. But the annular stack that we saw, the donut type 1, didn't work. The ram type 1 didn't work, and so the well was not stopped. So the big reason the ram type 1 didn't work was what happened to the riser pipe. So the riser pipe essentially was not specified correctly. It was too thin and bent under the pressure. And when that pipe bent, it's called effective compression, it moved away from where it should have been and outside of the range of that ram that acts like a shear to cut it in half, that annular ram, or sorry, that BOP ram. So we can see here, I'll move me over here, that it should have been, the riser should have been like this inside the ram and then been sliced in half. What happened was it bent from that effective compression, moved out of the line of the riser, or sorry, the riser moved out of the line of the ram and then ended up off center and was not sheared correctly. So that did not stop the flow of fluid, which essentially was the problem. Okay, so this report that I went over, in conclusion, we investigated the incident. We talked about the fallout from that as far as the oil that was spilt and the people, unfortunately, that were involved. We talked about what happened to the blowout preventer as far as the failures that the blowout preventer encountered. So we talked about the failure of the cement barrier, which initiated the whole thing, the ineffective BOP, and we talked about why the BOP was ineffective as far as the annular preventer failing and the buckling of the riser pipe. Then that buckling of the riser pipe caused the ram type shear to not work. So I've included some recommendations basically to change the materials in this rig. So the big one being the riser pipe. I've included some other ones. That cement plug should have been properly specified as well, which would have helped with that. Lastly, I want to remember the people that died. I want to close with that. So I've included their names and then actually a picture of the memorial that's up in New Orleans. Okay, so just take a moment to review those names and think that sort of, what I've talked about could be an abstraction as far as the technical details, but it did hit home with these people and their families. So I just want to close with that. And then here I have the references as well. Okay, so if there's no questions, don't hear any questions, that'll be it. Thank you very much.